Kitana, and they are based in Birzeit University, which is a university in Palestine, with whom we just started a collaboration project supported by the Belgian Development Agency, with the idea of supporting local authorities in revising their planning practices and tools to shift towards sustainable and climate responsive development. So the studio is contributing this, and Alessandra and Abdel will also conduct a parallel studio at Birzeit University with undergraduate students. We will have some moments of exchange. So, talking about the context, Palestine is, I would say, a rich context. First, historically rich. It was among the first regions to be inhabited and urbanized. The oldest cities are found in Palestine. It's also geographically very rich, and this is something you mainly realize when looking at historic maps. There are many illustrated Bibles where you see how the features of the landscape are expressed very intensively. So the geography is in fact at the same time complex and simple. It's between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan Valley. It's a chain of mountains with very contrasted conditions, as you can imagine, from the sea level to the top of the mountains around 800 meters, and the Jordan Valley, which lies more than 400 meters below sea level. So in a 100 kilometer section, you go through radically different conditions. And this very strong landscape was also imagined, reinterpreted. You see this in some also old paintings, or this was a gravery from a German publisher who represents Palestine as a landscape of hills, and it nicely shows how each of these hills have a very strong identity, and we know it also from all these myths, and it's still today the way this environment is conceived is through this collection of the hills. A third way this context is very rich is from its, I would say, multicultural dimension. This is an old map from what was supposed to be in the ancient, at the time of the Old Testament, where we see that very different ethnies and religious groups were living together in what hopefully was a sort of peaceful harmony. And interestingly, you would notice that these different ethnies would always occupy land from the sea to the Jordan Valley. So this idea of connecting the river to the sea was there already. But this cohabitation between different cultures has worsened since the establishment of the Israeli state in 1947. And the following wars have led to a progression of the Israeli state's territory at the expense of the Palestinian one. So we are now on the most right map of the condition, where the Palestinian population was confined in two main areas, the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. And this led to a number of displacement of the population, including the Nakba in 1947, where the population had no choice but to escape and find refuge in either West Bank, Gaza Strip, or one of the foreign countries around. And this is still visible in some villages that were abandoned, or from which, not really abandoned, but people were forced to move out. And this one has a particular meaning because it was emptied to make room for new development, but this new development never happened, and it was maintained in its original state. It's a testimony of this displacement that affected the whole region. And I would like to, this somehow relates to something that Alessandra, a partner from Birzeit University, is saying that although this is a park that in fact is also quite popular, it's at the same time a displacement. So it's just what is left from population displacement and land confiscation. And she invited us to be very cautious when we talk about park or even landscape in the very context of Palestine, where the definition or the qualification of a park is sometimes could be used as an excuse to just confiscate land. So the current situation is like this for the West Bank only. What you see in darker red are the territories which are fully managed by the Palestinian Authority. The pink one are half controlled by the Palestinian and the Israeli one, and the larger majority, about 60%, is militarily controlled by the Israeli one. So it's essentially a sort of archipelago where some pockets of Palestinians still survive, but framed by all these barriers that are sometimes walls, sometimes fences, but also roads. Many roads are now being constructed to interconnect the different Israeli new settlements, and therefore bring more fracture and more fragmentation to the context. So why would we do a landscape urbanism studio in this context? In fact, we may say that maybe landscape is the only weapon that you could propose in response to this oppressive condition. This is an image from an initiative called the 2 Million Trees, which has as a motto that planting tree as a form of civilian resistance. It's a way of occupying, activating the landscape in order to make sure that it is not confiscated for colonial reasons. So this is a bit the way we position our studio, how we could think of landscape as a tool. So I will read this. So our studio, West Bank Palestine, seeks to collectively explore how a metropolitan park system can serve as a tool for civilian resilience, cultural preservation, and territorial reclamation in the fractured West Bank territory. And referring to what Alessandra told us, we will not try to avoid the dualistic approach between built and unbuilt, but rather consider the landscape as a diverse, finely grained, grounded, and inhabited productive system. This is a picture from one of the sites students will eventually focus on, where you see how nicely the productive landscape takes advantage of some natural features, but also finely intertwines it with the village, the residential functions. As a method, we will use the transect approach. I think we also just discussed why always using plans when you make projects. In fact, we believe that in this condition, the transect, the cross-section, could be very relevant. And in fact, this image that you also saw in the cover, I saw it when I was for 1 week in Jerusalem 10 years ago, and it really fascinated me. And I was very lucky to find it back on the internet in the meantime. And it comes from one of these illustrated Bibles. It's from 1881, and it nicely shows what I mentioned about the contrasted conditions you find from the sea to the Jordan Valley. You have another one which follows the Jordan Valley, linear longitudinal cross-section. So this type of representation of the territory belong to this transect tradition or method that was invented by geographers initially to understand the relationship between vegetation, so the botanical discipline, in relation to the geography or geology. But over time, got more applications, like Macquarie would use it to see how these different species interact in ecosystems. A bit earlier, Patrick Geddes linked geography to human activities in his famous valley section. And more recently, you have examples like from here, Peter Bosselman using the transect approach to understand metropolitan regions where it's difficult to identify any center and periphery. The last one is how Matur and Nakonia also use the transect to capture somehow how the landscape is also perceived from a more vertical way of representation. And in fact, while preparing this studio, we found out that Fanny and I had a common, I don't know if it's obsession or passion, for transect. Fadi used it for his own master thesis on the Jordan Valley, and also is very active using it in his research group, the Center for Landscape Research in Toronto. This is an image he might comment after, he will join the discussion. And I was also using the transect to understand the location of Flemish cities along the river system. I explained that to the students last week, so I will not bother you again. But also a work we did 2 years ago in Milan, the Politecnico of Milan, to understand the relationship between this very vast, we talk about the sprawl to the north, at the foot of the Alp system. And then, by coincidence, this historic cross-section, the transect there, corresponds more or less to some of the sites that we anyhow wanted to focus on, because they are under pressure of new development, because they are also, so maybe you see it here, so there are 5 sites that we are now starting to zoom on. They are under development pressure. They are also facing this conflict of non-accessible zones, military control zones, but still Palestinian villages or towns. And they're also quite interesting ecologically. Many in the way they are all along one of these creeks that run from the top of the mountain to either the Jordan River or to the sea. But also we realized when collecting maps in terms of landscape value, biodiversity, that the Israeli side and the Palestinian side are based on different sources, and that also some of these maps may have a political bias, that there's a hidden agenda. So this is why we try to develop our own understanding of what a landscape system or metropolitan park system could be from the sea to the river. So I will show you some pictures of the work in progress. We started at the XL scale, producing together an atlas covering the entire 100 kilometers cross-section. Part of it is what we could call a bas-relief, so a sort of interactive model that students have produced and on which the findings will be every week put on the board and as a support of discussion. And then the students worked in different groups looking at one theme. We defined 6 themes. One is soil and topography, so understanding this crazy topography and also how it's been reshaped and adapted and exploited, especially with these terraces that are in the middle. You see the support of settlements, Palestinian settlements, and how this exploitation of stones is still visible in some active quarries, but many abandoned quarries that are really part of the identity of this region. A second theme is water, and here we see how most of the water, the clouds, come from the Mediterranean side on the left. Most of the precipitations happen on top of the mountain, but most goes back in the Mediterranean Sea. So there's a strong asymmetry between the Mediterranean and the Jordan slope, explaining why the Jordan Valley side has a semi-arid kind of climate. But also some pictures how the landscape has been adapted with drainage system, the terrace systems, wells, tried to, as much as possible, the little water that was still there, and to use it in the best possible way. Third thing is ecology. It's not visible here, but there was also a map showing how this region is like a highway for many species, mainly following the north-south routes, either along the sea, so along the dunes, or on the top of the mountain, or along the Jordan Valley. But then transversely, you have other species which are more local and would migrate seasonally from the lower to the upper parts of that cross-section. In terms of agriculture, great diversity also. Agriculture is in fact the main economic sector of Palestine, about 70%. And because of this great diversity of climates and soil conditions and water conditions, you have also great diversity in the types of products. The fifth is inhabited, looking at how people live and have developed towns, villages, and cities in this context. So obviously there are differences based on the topography. The flat areas you would find more grid development, but then in these steep and hilly areas, the settlements adapt to the slope. And traditionally, the Palestinian village would be more organic, following the terrace system. But the more recent Israeli colonies would choose the highest point of the hill, more in an idea of controlling the surrounding. And the last one is accessibility, which is more subjective, to some extent subjective, depending on who you are. You are or you're not allowed to move freely, and this is manifested through walls, fences, roads. I think that group also made a nice comparison between if you want to move through the road system, which has many checkpoints, or if, like on this cross-section, you follow the stream, the valley, and in fact there are less, if I understood well, a bit more continuous freedom if you follow the valley. So this is more or less done. It helps us now to have a bit of a big picture of the scale of the entire transect. And from tomorrow, we'll start zooming in. In fact, they started already. Each group, groups of 3, will focus on one area of 5 kilometers by 3.5. And we selected these 5 starting from the top of the mountain, 2 going down to the Mediterranean side, including this one, Beit Duku, who's framed by the border, the wall, having also, so in terms of control, is very intense, but it does have this valley system that interconnects, that flows in the middle. A second one on that side, at the foot of the hill, which is called Beit Likia. And then 3 on the other side. This is, it's too small for my head, El Bireh, which is one part of Ramallah, and an area with important growth pressure. A bit further down, the periphery of North Jerusalem, Northeast Jerusalem, that is has different, a former refugee camp, and also a quarry that is half abandoned. Then linking these two to the Jordan Valley, you have this fantastic Wadi Arcade, which is a nature reserve now, but also a very important symbolic connection to be maintained between Ramallah and Jericho, which is down between the foot of the hills and the Jordan Valley. So this is where we are now. I would like to thank the students for working hard last week and during the weekend, apparently, to finish the models. I think the next step will be identifying in your site what are the main urgent challenges regarding the 6 themes we discussed before: water, topography, ecology, and identifying possible design strategies that would address these different challenges together, and eventually we will zoom out again. So zoom in, you will make design strategies, and I imagine by the end of the semester also we'll zoom out and see how these different projects could be interconnected into a real system, and how, if we even zoom further out, how this transect that we chose could be seen as a prototype to be repeated along the different creeks that we see all over Palestine. Thank you.